Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'm grateful for having the opportunity to be here. I'm not that grateful. Okay, so for the problems with the technique. As a start, I have to disappoint you a bit. Actually, due to the time constraints, I decided to get rid of the present part of my presentation. Actually, those were not really deep observations, so I think it won't really hurt the content of what I would like to say here about one of the typical, but in a Romanian context, quite important event and its afterlife at the beginning of the 20th century. I don't think that the myth of Alba Iulia, middle-sized city in Transylvania, would be exceptional. It is just a case study of myth-making in the modern times after and in the time of the nations and the age of the nation-state. What gives it importance is its present and past context. Today it is an event of fixed meaning. It is treated as a natural end of a long story of unification of the Romanians that is conceived as a teleological story, and in the past its context was rather more problematic. It can be read, and I will try to read it, as part of those divisions that were well mapped by Irina Liezeanu in her book on the regionalist problematic in the first decade of Greater Romania. Just to underline that it is not really an exceptional story, I would immediately offer possible comparison with Czechoslovakia. I won't deal with this problem, but it would be really interesting to see how these cases are related. In Czechoslovakia there was a powerful Republican myth that was also in a way hijacked, used, abused and misused by many actors and in the 2 decades between the 2 World Wars. And for freeing me from problems with concept, I just developed a working definition for the aim of this paper, or I used this working definition for the aim of this paper of the myth. I would only add one element that in this case it is also meant to project and convey a natural order of the world to the people. So probably not everyone here knows what happened on the 1st of December in Alba Iulia. A great assembly, according to the contemporaries. More than 100,000 people gathered there and declared that Romanians of Hungary do not want to live further in that country. They want to join their ethnic kin on the other side of the Carpathians and in other regions in this world. Anyhow, it was far from being exceptional in the sense that the collapse of empires was quite conventional and common event at the end of the Great War. There was a wave of popular manifestations all over East Central Europe and even in Central Europe. And the collapse of state administration was not really uncommon as well. And I suppose that if one would like to give a causal explanation to the events, that is one of the most important aspects what happened in Transylvania at the end of the First World War, the collapse of the state administration that was not able to cope with the shock of a lost war. That led to what I labeled here as micro-revolutions, so local eruptions of popular discontent that led to the expulsion of the local administrators, the gendarmes, the army, the police, and these local micro-revolutions were ethnically indiscriminative. So for the local population it was indifferent whether the village notary they hated so much was a Romanian or a Hungarian or a German. They just wanted to get rid of the state administration and the power. However, as a parallel process, one can detect the emergence of so-called national councils. That is again far from an uncommon situation here, and through which the local population, organized along ethnic lines, took over the administration of these communities. And I state here that it had an influential experience on the population, and it influenced their reactions to what happened with this myth during the interwar era. Another important aspect that throughout these 2 decades, the Great Assembly was a living memory for many people, for ordinary participants and for those who were leading personalities in the event, although some of them passed away in these 2 decades, but they were usually duly commemorated with state honors. And as it was living memory, I would hypothesize that this multiplicity of memories can underline how much the myth of Alba Iulia, how much the concept of what happened of Alba Iulia and what kind of impact it has had and has on Romania was a social construct. So, what is the myth, what I call here myth of Alba Iulia? It implies that the city is a symbolic center of all Romanians and Romania. One should mention 2 important historic references that that helped to create this concept. At the site of the city existed once a Roman city, so it connected the site to the ethnogenesis of the Romanians, being it either solely Roman descent or a Dacian Roman descent, and it was the site where 16th century Prince of Wallachia, Mihai Viteazul, took over the rule in the Principality of Transylvania, and Mihai Viteazul was the ruler of Moldavia as well, simultaneously. So in a sense, he is today even treated in history textbook as the first person who united the Romanian nation. Otherwise, it was a distinctly Transylvanian story with many other historical references. And these historical references also were important regarding the social background of the Alba Iulia, the events at Alba Iulia at the end of the First World War. The mass gathered there was mainly composed of peasants, and in the history of Transylvania, at least 2 mass uprisings were counted on as ethnically defined Romanian uprisings against Hungarian oppressors. The first one at the end of the 18th century, led by Horea, Klosk, and Krishan, and the leaders of this uprising were executed at Alba Iulia. And in 1848, in the mountains of the vicinity, in the nearby mountains, there was a huge uprising led by Abraham Iancu that also had connections, factual connections to the city, where Austrian, Habsburg, and imperialist garrison was stationed throughout the civil war in Transylvania. And one can also mention here another mass demonstration in 1848 at the nearby city of Blaj, that was the seat of the Greek Catholic archbishop. Beyond these historical references, 2 key concepts should be mentioned. That the Declaration of Alba Iulia was a kind of expression of the will for the people, the will for freedom, and a kind of revolution. And it was all summed up as the final stage of the realization of the millenary vision of free and united Romanians. So 3 important characteristics also had to be mentioned here: that it was conceived as an event that was national, so it was a distinctly Romanian one, unitary, in the sense that the Transylvanian Romanians, regardless of their social position, status and background, were part of this demonstration and community that declared its freedom and independence, and democratic, exactly because of this social composition, democratic event. So at least at the moment it seemed that Alba Iulia is just a logical conclusion and the climactic moment of a linear historical teleology. However, later other important aspects gained prominence in the construct. First of all, that the freedom was more and more reinterpreted as the liberation of the peasantry from its oppression, and with connecting national, unitary and democratic character of the event, even a set of moral values that was seen as distinctly Transylvanian was created. So it is quite instructive how Iuliu Maniu, one of the leaders of the assembly and one of the most important political figures of interwar Romania, chastised Miron Cristea in 1938 when Cristea accepted the post of prime minister during the king's dictatorship, that Cristea, who was a Transylvanian, a former political friend of Maniu and the son of a Romanian serf, was ready to help the king to dismantle democracy. Maniu clearly expressed that it is incompatible with Cristea being a Transylvanian and the son of a serf. And in this sense, he referred to the oath taken at Alba Iulia to preserve Transylvania's rights. So, and this is another important aspect that I will later refer to, that Alba Iulia offered one way of integrating the new territories into Greater Romania, and what happened later was contrary to this offer of the Transylvanian Romanians. However, it soon turned out that history hasn't stopped at that moment, and as soon as the government of the democratic bloc, led by Alexander Vaida-Voivod, another important Transylvanian Romanian politician, fall from government, and governments coming from the Old Kingdom, or composed of mainly from Old Kingdom Romanian politicians, were installed by the king, and later came a long period of national liberal domination of the political life. The myth was developed further. It was first of all projected into the future, just as Maniu a decade later asserted that in 1918 it seemed that the reason of existence for the National Party, the party of the Transylvanian Romanians, has ceased, but a decade later it still had to exist because of the political situation, because they were not able to realize what they promised or what they declared at Alba Iulia. So it was even the event was even reenacted almost a decade later, with similar mobilization, politicians touring the countryside. One of them, Emil Hatziaganu, lawyer, university professor at the Cluj University, many times minister in certain National Peasant Party governments, even made a proper pilgrimage from Cluj. He covered the distance between Cluj and Alba Iulia on foot. And this new Alba Iulia, a decade later, became the same event, or symbolized the same event for a new generation, and at the same time it was an event to construct a new Romanian nation as well. These young generation Romanians, who were the followers of the National Party, at that time National Peasant Party, as the National Party and the Peasant Party of the Old Kingdom merged 2 years earlier. It was, in a sense, a redefinition of the unity of the first Alba Iulia, where, as I mentioned, the unity was interpreted as the unity of the Transylvanian Romanians. So this time, the unity was extended to the peasants, but explicitly to the peasants of the Old Kingdom. Just as some months later, Ion Michalake, the former leader of the peasant party, the Old Kingdom party, expressed in a speech that until that moment, the Transylvanian Romanians knew only the scum of the Old Kingdom, but with the ascendance of the National Peasant Party to power some months later, they were able to filter this scum from the Romanians and know there is the possibility, the chance for every Romanian, the Transylvanian as well, to learn how the real Romanians of the Old Kingdom are. And for the generational aspect, I want only to refer to the newspaper Chemaria, that is the official youth newspaper of the National Peasant Party, in which an editorial expressed that the National Peasant Youth took a binding oath at Alba Iulia. So I would like to remind you to Manuel's assertion to Miron Cristea when he accused Cristea to violate his own oath taken a decade earlier. So in this sense, the second oath bound together not only those who took this specific oath, but those who took either one of these oaths. As some closing conclusion on the main myth, it is very interesting to see how with the use of these aspects and elements, this myth was transformed into a kind of, from this linear teleology into a kind of circular teleology, and the circular story of emancipation of the nations, as every major peasant uprising had some connections to Alba Iulia, and it was the true expression of popular will. It was imagined as a true expression of popular will. It was implied that that was the natural place for unity to happen, although these events were driven by different social forces. Mihai Viteazul was a typical 16th century prince, and later came the Transylvanian Romanians, and a decade later the Transylvanian Romanians and the peasants from the Old Kingdom. However, political opponents of the Transylvanian Romanians soon laid their own claim on the place, and they developed a kind of counter myth that was less forceful, less powerful, but still it was a kind of mythology. The most important event of this mythology was the coronation of the king in 1922. That was accompanied by a campaign of liberal politicians around Transylvania, and counter rallies of the local Transylvanian Romanians who characterized their political opponents as colonizers among the natives, behaving like British colonizers in Africa, and it led to a series of stigmatizations, mutual stigmatizations. For those familiar with Romanian imagery of the others, I think Mihai Sorean's quote is quite telling how the National Party Romanians demonized their political opponents. And it led to a kind of emergence of parallel histories and a debate over who brought the freedom to the Romanians in Transylvania. The liberals tried to use Iași as the scene of another unity. In the 19th century, they just tried to juxtapose it with Alba Iulia and create their own history without the Transylvanian peasant uprisings and based on the history of the Wallachia and Moldavia. There were some minor complementary myths. Some dissidents of the Romanian National Party, so Transylvanians, tried to appropriate the legitimacy deriving from Alba Iulia. So when they seceded from the National Party, they usually portrayed themselves as the ones who will really realize the promises of Alba Iulia, and they could have always referred to their personal involvement of the event of that day. And for the Hungarian minority, it offered the chance to assert and to reinforce their claims on autonomy, and they could always realign themselves with the local Transylvanian Romanians, adhering to their anti-colonialist discourse and promoting the regionalist ideas. So some concluding remarks on how this myth of Alba Iulia worked in the interwar era. It was a potential foundation myth for Greater Romania, the National Party, the National Peasant Party, or even for distinct Transylvania. And it is clear that the true heirs to this event had a kind of entitlement for leading Romania, and it led to a very active, discursive activity in which the opposing political forces tried to create their opponents as outgroups of their respective concept of the Romanian nation. It even had important impact on popular mobilization. So in 1928, the Romanian political elite was capable to mobilize tens of thousands of the population, who clearly tried to reenact not only the assembly but those micro-revolutions around what happened there. And it led to open violence against Old Kingdom Romanians as well. And the last very important aspect of the myth happened is how it was fused with the personal cult of Iuliu Maniu during the 30s, and how it led to a redefinition of the nation. How democracy was redefined as a kind of way to reveal the eternal will of the people and the national substance, and how it was asserted that the aim of the nation state is to create to realize the authentic way of existence for the nation. So the Maniu, who was always considered to be a democratic politician, in this letter to Christia even implied that that kind of dictatorship that would be based on a wide popular movement and would serve more far-flung ideas than just the claim laid on power by one person, the king, would be acceptable. And 1 year later he even asserted that the nation's soul is a kind of invisible fluid that could be touched upon by only a select few. So with this process, Maniu was slowly merged. Maniu's image was slowly merged with the content of the myth. He became a kind of not simply symbolic figure, but he became the embodiment of what happened at Alba Iulia. As this personal cult developed, it gained a lot of traction through Christian allusions. In 1939, Maniu was even being alluded to be Christ, savior of the nation, and I think that the last quote is quite telling how he saw himself at that moment. And actually, this quote is not from a public appearance, but a very limited personal event, celebration of his birthday. So, to sum up on a bit more theoretical level, the myth of Alba Iulia was, during these 2 decades, was moving in time from being the end of the teleological national history to being one event in the line of similar events, and today it is just fixed. But I think that with this fixed nature, it became demythicized, And for the spatial aspect, one can again tell that although it was meant to assign the position of the symbolic center of the nation to this location, it remained always during these 2 decades contested, and today, as it is not a contested myth anymore, it lost any mythical content, and it is just a place for a ritual.
Thank you very much.